Hey, and how you doing, folks? Yours truly, Randee Ran here, and welcome to another edition of today's talk. Today we spoke to Dr. Oscar J. Underwood, and he's the founder and apostle of Cathedral of Praise Ministries and Church International. He's also the founder and superintendent and headmaster of Cornerstone Christian College Prep Day and High School, as well as being the founder and president of Cornerstone Bible College out in Indiana. And oh man, this brother has about two or three PhDs, a couple or three master's degrees, as we briefly discussed in the interview. Is very well educated brother, and a big shout out and thank you to my good brother Yusef Salam uh, out there in Connecticut for introducing me to him and allowing me to interview him. And the topic that we discussed today was, um, is it a good idea to introduce policy development and implementation to middle schoolers, as well as, not just introducing them to it, but teaching them, what it is and doing it on a graduated scale. In other words, start them, say, at the sixth grade, which is my preference. Start them at the sixth grade and work it all the way up into the 12th grade on a graduated scale. I think in this day and time, not only should our children, but we need to become a bit smarter about policy, what it is, and how we can affect policy. As a matter of fact, how we can develop policy in order to make change in our community. Um, I, 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 I don't think that's ever more prevalent than it is right now, as we are about to have some very challenging times in this country, I think, with the confirmation of Jeff Sessions as the Attorney General in this country, for this country. I may be wrong, and certainly I hope I'm wrong. I hope the skeptics are wrong, and certainly hope that Mr. Sessions can turn a new leaf and see um, that we as African Americans are not animals. We're not, less than human. We're humans, and um, we are a part of this American landscape. Hell, we built the country, for crying out loud. But at any rate, that's another story for another day. Um, the interview, again, we talked about teaching middle schoolers about policy implementation, and he agreed that it's a good idea. As a matter of fact, he would even propose that we teach them even earlier than that. So that's how deep he runs. Um, I want to also tell you, as this interview was very important. I think there's some ambient sound in the interview, some paper crumbling. I don't know where it's coming from, but certainly the enemy is busy, as he does not want me to impart this information to you, as it is very vital. I ask that you bear with me with this interview, as the ambient sound is a bit bothersome in some parts of the interview, but nevertheless, you really need to hear this, because we're going to visit this issue over and 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 over again. Right? As much as I hate to use the term wake up call, but it is indeed a wake up call. It's not for me, because I already know what's going on. A lot of us don't. A lot of us don't even care. But I guarantee you this: um, if things happen the way that we think it might happen, you're going to care. So you need to arm yourself, with content, with information on how you can make a difference, genuinely make a difference. Please listen to the interview. Please listen to the interview. It's about 40 minutes long. And when you listen to the interview, set aside some time to hear it. Set aside some time where you're doing nothing else but listening to this interview, because it's that important, folks. It's probably one of the most important interviews I've ever done, and I've been doing this for quite a while. Please listen to the interview. I'm yours truly, Randee Ran, and thank you for listening to today's talk. And we're back. Yours truly, Randee Ran here for another edition of today's talk. And we want to welcome to the show Dr. Oscar J. Underwood, who first off is the author of many, and I mean many books. He's the founder of Apostle of Cathedral of Praise Ministries and Church International, and he's also the founder, superintendent, and headmaster of Cornerstone Christian College Prep Day School and High School, and he's the founder and president of Cornerstone Bible College. Welcome to the show, Dr. Underwood.
It's my honor. It's my honor indeed.
Let me tell our audience what we're going to be talking about today is teaching our students, teaching our children policy, about policy, what it is and how important it is, starting as early as middle school age. I want to ask you, in your opinion, is teaching middle school students about what policy is and how to develop it, etc., too early for them to learn?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, I would even suggest that we start as early, as the child begins to show cognition and able to make choices and able to understand, even in the home, why certain choices are not good for him or her, and helping them to develop a personal frame of reference so that they begin to understand that they're not at the mercy of the things that happen to them in life, but that they have within them the capabilities and the capacity to be able to have a say and some power about the contour and the context and the direction of their lives. So middle school absolutely is not too early, and I would even advocate starting much earlier than that.
Okay, now what steps would you recommend that teachers take to teach students of the importance of policy and how it affects them?
I would first of all, I would encourage the teacher in the classroom who's immediately working with the student, and then I would encourage the building administrators who are supposed to, in effective schools, supposed to be the number one educator in the building, to be able to really support the classroom teachers and creating a dynamic learning and transformation environment. I would say to them that instead of looking at policy primarily from the framework of political science and so forth, I would encourage them to go beyond that and look to establish immediately relevance concerning policy with his or her students, because policy is, if the students understand that policy is not a foreign thing, it is part of the process by which humanity is able to self-actualize and become who he or she, the best that he or she were destined or has the ability to be, the way that their ideas become a reality, the way that their dreams and their desires are able to become a life that they can live, and that if they would start at the point of relevance, and then move from that as we talk with the students about what are your goals in life, what do you dream of doing, and then begin to bring up the discussion that, okay, that's what that you're desiring, but every dream, every goal needs a process. So what's the process, or how do you think it can come about? And then begin to talk objectively then about the whole principle of policy as far as society is concerned and institutions are concerned, including that classroom? Why do we have certain policies in here? And hopefully the young person will be able to make the connect that the policies in the classroom or the policies in the school, the policies in the district, and even the policies in their home that they're supposed to exist for the purpose of them being able to bring about or experience the most effective result, personally or corporately in the classroom or the school building.
Okay, now, Dr. Underwood, I read the introduction about your book, Vindication of Broken Women Who Possess Deep Walls, 2016. And the first line of the introduction reads, and I'm quoting, every extraordinary encounter usually opens the door to extraordinary transformation and revelation of extraordinary potential. I too believe that this is true. Now, our children are presently experiencing extraordinary encounters, whether through poverty, single parenthood, seeing malfeasance at an early age, etc. I believe that if we tap into that pain or that desire to have a better life, we can teach them pertinent skills like, say, policy development that will hopefully make better lives for them and their community or communities. What are your thoughts about that?
Sir, I agree with you 200 and even more than that percent. The fact that I'm encouraged, the fact that we can even have this discussion, and that you have seen through this whole the whole conflict, and you pulled out of that the fact that until they understand that the pain in itself, the disenfranchisement, the marginalization, the discrimination, the malfeasance, where they've had to witness those that we're supposed to trust for our safety, actually doing things that are not in our best interest or our survival or health. That when they're able to see that, and what I would call it, that pain, their pain and their disappointment should be made to serve their goals and their dreams and their purpose if they understand that they need a framework by which not to live life in a random way, but to cause anything that is happening in their lives to actually, through a policy framework, policy development, and so forth, that they understand that. And this is one of the ones that at the school that the alumni and the students, one of their affirmations or their principles that guide them. Sir, I agree with you 200 and even more than that percent. The fact that I'm encouraged, the fact that we can even have this discussion, and that you have seen through this whole the whole conflict, and you pulled out of that the fact that until they understand that the pain in itself, the disenfranchisement, the marginalization, the discrimination, the malfeasance, where they've had to witness those that we're supposed to trust for our safety, actually doing things that are not in our best interest or our survival or health. That when they're able to see that, and what I would call it, that pain, their pain and their disappointment should be made to serve their goals and their dreams and their purpose if they understand that they need a framework by which not to live life in a random way, but to cause anything that is happening in their lives to actually, through a policy framework, policy development, and so forth, that they understand that. And this is one of the ones that at the school that the alumni and the students, one of their affirmations or their principles that guide them. God does not waste pressure or heat on corn that can't pop. So if the pressure is here, like Pascal's law says, that pressure applied at any point is equally distributed to all points of a closed container, looking for the substance in it to find a way out. That if the pressure is what I'm experiencing, then I'm gonna look beyond what individuals who or things in life that maybe meant me harm intended to do, but I'm going to look, as Dr. Miles Monroe would say, in the mind of the Creator and ask him, what is the purpose of this? If I'm dealing with it, then just like the analogy of toothpaste, I need the toothpaste, but unless there's pressure, it's not going to make its way out to the top. And if the toothpaste a lot has been used, then it's going to be folded even more and pressed even harder in order to yet bring out of that tube what's there. It's the same stuff in life, even more so with us as human beings. That we need a redefinition and a reawareness and a paradigm shift on how those of us who deal with pressure as a way of life from the cradle to the grave actually begin to see it and begin to harness it, maximize it, and begin to use it in ways that cause us, through policy development, to have a framework by which we choose our way into the life that we desire to live. I know I said a lot, but that question really excited me.
Mm-hmm.
That you just brought up. Our kids need it. All kids need it, but especially those who have historical experiences with marginalization, disenfranchisement, discrimination, poverty, name it. Those things in and of themselves can't stop the potential. The potential is too powerful, but the potential needs a process by which to serve the purpose.
I'm glad that you appreciate the question because I tell you the truth. Preparing for this interview, as I was doing my homework, I saw the line, every extraordinary encounter usually opens the door to extraordinary transformation and revelation
Absolutely.
of extraordinary potential. That right there is speaking to the pressure that you are talking about. It's the same thing as, say, making a diamond.
Yes, sir.
There's all kinds of pressure that is applied to that coal, and it forms and it pressurizes, and eventually enough of that happens, and there you have it. You have this diamond that is produced. Well, it's the same thing with we as humans.
Yes.
A lot of us are going through a lot of pressure and a lot of intense moments. But when we come out of that, uh, we're much stronger. We're certainly much smarter. And to tell you the truth, we've learned more about ourselves than we ever knew. But if that pressure didn't happen,
Yes, sir.
if that intense situation didn't happen, you would have never known that or found that out about yourself. So I'm glad that you appreciate that question because when I saw those words, it just set me on fire, and I just started writing the question, and that was one of my favorite pieces of the whole questions, to tell you the truth. But I'm glad you appreciated
I
that.
agree. I mean, it is powerful. It ministered. My brother encouraged me in incredible ways because even as you voiced it, I began to think about the fact that people like us and millions of others who are out there who want to do more, who know that there is so much more possibilities than limitations that all children should be able to experience, especially poor and black and brown kids. But this whole discussion on policy, I'm that you are bringing up something that really education across from the Atlantic to the Pacific and around the world should be looking at, especially when it comes to those who have been underserved. That's one of my favorite quotes too in the book. I mean, about this woman who was labeled because of her behavior, her pain, and misunderstood, and for a while alienated from her own potential. But one encounter with Jesus on an uncomfortable day, very, very hot day, at a place where there was the deepest well in the region, Jacob's well, and that deep wells referred to as an analogy for those of us who have those people who have experienced deep wounding because they carry within them deeper deposits of potential, and that by him meeting with her, and as you were voicing that quote, it hit me. He had a policy discussion with her.
Yes.
What he did with her, he knew what he had placed in her. She didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And she needed to understand. And after that encounter with him, what he spoke to her, and when she began to look in her and to see herself, not through her pain, but through her potential, because the pressures that she had dealt with was confirmation that there was something in her that needed to be able to be uncovered and brought forth in order for fulfillment to occur. She was never the same. And she ended up, to this day, touching millions and maybe even billions of lives, through her story.
Yes. Now, Dr. Underwood, I see that you have a Master's of Science in Education Administration and Curriculum
Yes.
Development. Would you deem it wise for school districts to incorporate policy development and implementation into their curriculums?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, yes. Yeah, absolutely. They need to do it. And again, I would say to teachers that if you want to maximize the instructional process and the subject matter and that particular piece of the curriculum that you're going to be discussing, do it do policy development and formation from a framework of relevance. Let them first understand personally what it is, and then from that concentric circle or series of circles, move outward then all the way to society, to the classroom, to school, the district, to society, to institutions, and so forth, and understand how it all serves the same purpose, which is since our lives are the sum total of our choices, we choose our way into whatever life is or could be. That policy gives you the process and the framework by which you can make quality choices and have quality results.
We are speaking to Dr. Oscar J. Underwood, who is the author of many, and I mean many books. He's also the founder and apostle of Cathedral of Praise Ministries and Church International. He's also the founder, superintendent, and headmaster of Cornerstone Christian College Prep Day and High School. And he's the founder and president of Cornerstone Bible College, and he's very gracious to give us some of his very valuable time today. Dr. Underwood, I know that the problems we have in our community will take more than a policy fix, but good policy creates opportunity for improvement, justice, and for law and order. In your opinion, what can communities of color do to effectively enhance long-term change that continuously and consistently educate us?
I would say, my brother, that potential is too potent and too valuable and too important to the person to be left to a random or haphazard or a subjective framework or process. One of the worst things that we can continue to do as a community is to birth and rear our children without a policy framework where and therefore assign them to a reactive mode by default as opposed to a proactive one. Until they understand that life, whether we heard it or not, life doesn't just happen.
That's right.
Life is a process. What is didn't just show up. It's and choices, choices, choices. That's why we have a free will. Is how life has become what it is for each of us. Um, whether we chose by choosing or chose by ignoring and refusing to choose, or choosing without a proper understanding, awareness, and knowledge. And of course, as you and I would agree, wisdom, which is being able to apply the knowledge that we have. If with the disappearance of the elders in our homes and in our families, our grandparents, God bless their souls, we had wisdom, and our parents and even those some in my generation had access to wisdom from little up, and thus we learned that there was a perspective and a way to make choices, to make certain choices and to refuse to make others, or to refuse to choose in certain ways. And we knew there were outcomes, and if we didn't want those particular outcomes, we would choose more wisely by using the very framework that you are advocating today, which is the fact that even though policy might be a term that when you hear it, that could be in a way causing a disconnect in your mind, that if you really understand what it is, you can't be human and live an effective life, a peaceful life, or a fulfilled life unless you've got some sort of policy framework at the personal level that is formed through, through your relationship with God, formed through your relationship with your parents, formed through your relationship with your potential, formed through your relationship with your purpose, your dreams. It doesn't just happen. If your goal is to, for example, to get your body in shape, there's some pain. There's a process. We can sit around and think about it all day long and wish about it, but when it becomes truly a desire, then we're going to look for a framework, a process, a set of procedures, a protocol by which what we desire actually comes to pass. And the pain that may result in that whole process must be made to serve the desire and the purpose that we want to bring about.
Dr. Underwood, I have an interest in introducing middle school students to learning about law. Okay, I'm starting a program with a long-term view that teaches middle school students law. This program will be taught on a graduated scale, which will extend all the way through to high school graduation. In your opinion, would this type of program be useful, and what steps would you take in order to make it happen and remain sustainable?
You know, I keep going back to that powerful question that you asked in response to extraordinary encounters usually open the door to extraordinary transformation and revelation of extraordinary potential. I keep going back to the need, the need, the need. I mean, you as an educator, myself as an educator, we know that which is taught from a perspective of relevance is able to be retained and maximized forever in a plethora of ways. So again, I would advocate starting at the micro person-centric level and then moving beyond that to the macro. And especially, I think that you're engaging the law, the concept of law, and the understanding of the students understanding the law in its purest form what it is. Because whereas policy helps guide and law enforces, But yet, before a law can be enforced, it has to be written, it has to be codified, it has to be created. And I teach my students that one of the things that those who pursue law, like at graduate level, what they find out is that the law tells more about the people, the conditions or the desires of the people who wrote the law and created the laws, or coming up with those laws, than the laws themselves.
Yeah.
Because there was something that they feared, or
Hmm.
something that they wanted badly,
Yep.
that caused them to put into force. In other words, a societal policy
Yes.
that we call law.
That's right. That's right. That's
That we
right.
call law.
Hmm.
So absolutely, I agree with you doing that. And then hopefully one of the outcomes that will result is that they will know law as having the power over them, but they as being also equal members of our democracy. That they can by understanding how law is created, they then can also begin, after moving out from the micro level of creating certain frameworks and policy principles by which they live by. They have a right to have a say in shaping law or modifying laws that do not serve them, or don't serve certain members of the society as well as it does others.
That's right. And to your point, when you had said that, people that had a fear or wanted to see some change were able to come up with this law or come up with this policy, and it benefited them. Well, you know what? And that's good. I mean, they're participating in this democracy, in this society, but there are a lot of times where that policy that's crafted or that law that's passed has a negative and detrimental effect on people, where it's supposed to serve as well. Okay, and that is the whole purpose of me coming up with this program for uh, these youth, to teach them that very vital skill. Well, you know what? You want to make change, or if this is
Come
affecting
on,
you in a negative way and you don't like it, well, here's what you do about it. It's one thing to take it to the streets and protest. That's cool. But
come on.
after that protest is over, after all the smoke clears, what are you prepared to do? As a matter of fact, what do you know how to do? And
Right.
that's where the incredible void comes in, and therefore the whole thing is stopped because they don't know where to go from there.
And I love that. And then and asking them also, how do you make sure in your own describe how you do life to make sure that you're not victimized by your own choices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That you're not victimized by your own choices, because they've got the same locus of control, inherent power, as I talk about a lot. That's in the people who wrote those laws. Use their power, their inherent power, to come up with laws collectively that would be advantageous to them. They then use that same process in order, first of all, to not be victimized by those laws,
Yes.
by refusing to be at the mercy of emotions, because they don't have a personal policy framework by which they, using their intellect and using knowledge and wisdom, can control their emotions in order to make sure they exercise the full extent of their power to change that which is unjust.
I wanted to ask. I know that police having open and hand-in-hand relationships with the communities they serve has its place and purpose. However, in your opinion, can and should the police take more of a role in teaching our middle school students about what policing is and about the law?
You know what? I love that question also. Yes, because they serve the community, and there's a big emphasis that law enforcement understands that needs to be placed on community policing, and we policy.
Yep.
Policy. And when the kids are able to see them there, and they're letting it, and they are confirming and encouraging their personal empowerment to be able to follow a personal policy framework and to understand how community policies and laws are created and why they exist, and that if you feel they are unfair and unjust, that by virtue of the United States Constitution, and these are your rights. And I think as the students get to know them, and as they get to know the students, and begin to understand that you cannot paint use a white brush to paint humanity. You cannot look at a person's color or how they're dressed or where they live and decide their value. We all have value. And I just don't want the kids to continue to be at a place where they don't understand, where they're afraid of that which is created to serve them.
Okay.
And that exists for the purpose of society being able to have the order that allows all segments of that society to flourish and be contributing members to that society, leaving it better than what they found it. I would think that all police and law enforcement institutions in a community would want to be a part of something like that. Don't
Okay.
just talk about what the laws are and what the penalties are. Let's talk about why the laws exist and that they're to serve, and that the law at its grassroots level is to protect the students in that classroom as well as the rest of society.
Now, would you be able to recommend any resources for our audience to review that will enable them to effectively introduce and teach policy to their children or students?
You know, as a man of faith, I know that you're not going to be surprised that the first thing, since policy is a deliberate and intentional system of principles by which we create a framework in order for us to make quality decisions in order to have the desired goals or results in life, I would start with the principles that come from the Word of God. I would start with them, like with my students. With I see prep 26 years, my brother, and I used to wonder why do the alums of the school, even those from the first graduating class, how come they refuse to get rid of their notebooks? How come they keep their notes? They say that in times of great stress or indecision, when they don't know how to choose, they go back to their notes from classes, the various classes, because the CPRET method is that we don't separate principles for life principles from the academics, that we use the academics to pour forth the principles by which to effectively do life, and therefore create policy, personal policy. And they keep them because they say they still to this day serve them, and as a reason as to why they're able to succeed in post-secondary education and also in life. So I would advocate that and it's easier for me to do it, for us to do it at CPREP, because being a Christian-based school, then we're looking for God's sovereignty and principles, whether it's algebra, geometry, whether it's physics, whether it's literature, whether it's the social sciences. What does this particular event or whatever teach you about how to choose, or what principle do you pull from this that you can better do life? And they keep them, and they rehearse them, and they remember them, and true to policy, they guide them in making personal choices that will cause them not to have to live a life of regret. So the Bible Absolutely, yes. Also, I would say, I would say, a good resource is is uh, is history, because there you can look at people and events and talk about why did they choose as they did, that caused history to remember them as they're remembered, or cause the event that took place. And also, literature is a tremendous, especially in any schools, literature is a tremendous resource to use in being able to allow the students to see themselves in those characters and and in those situations, and to extract from that life lessons by which they can better do life.
Okay, I'm sitting here writing down some notes there as you speak because I'm always
I want to commend you. I am honest. I do so many of these, and I enjoy them. I honestly do. But today's topic, and I commend you.
oh, thank
This
you.
topic is so needful, and it will take the victimization out of the equation and replace it with empowerment from
Exactly.
within, and that is so close to my heart.
Empowerment. You just said the magic word right there, empowerment, because that's what it's about. It takes the victimization out of a lot of these children's lives, so they don't become future victims. And I hate to even think that they may even already be victims in their very young age, because they have been served with a very
Yes,
incredible
sir.
deficit to come out of.
Yep. Yep.
And it's empowerment. It's empowerment. There's got to be something that can be developed that empowers them, and in turn, it gives them the ability to empower their communities, their families, friends, what have you. And again, this is done with a long term view. Rome wasn't built overnight.
Yes.
Even the good Lord took 6 days to
Yes.
make the world, and he could have done it in the bat of an eye. So
Yes.
it's done with a long term view, but it has to start somewhere. You know,
Protocol and process. You
absolutely.
know what? Let me recommend also. I don't know if you've gotten your hands on Bumblebees Can Fly, but that has your and what you're doing all over it, because the reason why the bumblebee is flying for eons, in spite of the laws of aerodynamics and laws of gravity that say that it shouldn't be able to fly, is because of its inherent power, the power inside of it that overrides limitations. That's that book really chronicles my whole methodology, and and teaching. Watch this, my brother. Teaching students and adults to empower themselves by accessing and acknowledging the power that the Creator placed in them.
We have been talking with Dr. Oscar J. Underwood. He is the author of many, 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 and I know I keep saying many, many. Folks, this man has written about 10 to 15 books. Uh, he has a long credentialed list that I could just go on, and I'll add that he has about 2 or 3 PhDs. So he is a very, very valuable resource, and I'm very glad that my good friend, brother Yusuf Salam, referred me to him.
Yes.
And he's also the founder and apostle of Cathedral of Praise Ministries and Church International. He's also the founder, superintendent, and headmaster of Cornerstone Christian College Prep Day and High School. And he's the founder and president of Cornerstone Bible College. Dr. Underwood, in closing, please feel free to plug your website or any other projects that you're involved in.
Yes, sir. The website is Oscar Dowdell, Dowdell Underwood, and it'll come up. Twitter will come up. Facebook will come up. The books will come up. And I want to say this: when I became the first African American Indiana Teacher of the Year, and that was, my friend, that was several years ago. But one of the things that that I look back at that award and the whole context of it is that God was serving notice to me then that it is our responsibility that when we have experienced a needed healing, that where we've been wounded, it's our job to reach back and bring forth others who in turn, as they experience fulfillment, can reach back and do the same. And I so much of what we talked about, what I've written about, I was at one time that little boy that did not know that there was potential and significance in me. And there were those teachers and others, my grandparents, my parents, that God used to help me to come to a place of awareness that not only did I have ability in me, but there was a purpose for it, and there was required accountability in order to use it to glorify God, advance His kingdom, and to empower others, and through awareness, so they might empower themselves and fulfill the purpose for which they breathe. That's what we're in it for.
Yeah.
And that's what fulfills me. And I can tell by our conversation, my friend, that's what drives you.
Yep.
And that's what should drive every true educator. Every true educator, that passion.
Mm-hmm.
Not the pay, the passion.
Yep.
The passion that I just got to do this. I got to see that the twinkle in the kid's eye when they get it, or when all of a sudden they accept the fact that they too have significance and potential in them, and that they're going to make a difference in life.